Today we're going to do a two-part tutorial on Shoot the Clown using XNA. And for this, we're going to use Visual Studio 2010. So Microsoft Visual Studio 2010, you want to load it up. And it's under Microsoft Visual Studio if you haven't installed. I recommend you right-click on here and choose Pin to Taskbar. And what that's going to do is it's going to put the little infinity icon there. And then you can just select that anytime you want to open up Visual Studio. So would you please open up Visual Studio right now? Okay. So guys, at some point, it's going to ask you for what environment you want to do it if it's the first time. Choose Visual C#, but even if you don't, you can still get to XNA using C# from whatever language you chose as the default. So you're going to choose File New, and you're going to do a new project. And the key here, guys, is for you in this classroom, you got to save it to the media drive folder, your student folder in the media drive. And the reason why is that it's going to want to put it on your U drive or C drive, and it's going to create an executable, and that's going to get blocked by the permissions on the computer. But if you go to the media drive, it won't be blocked. So that's what you want to do. And so you want to, under Install Templates, you want to go to Visual C#. So if for some reason you chose Visual Basic or something else, you can always click on other languages and you can see the other languages that you have available. But it's Visual C#, XNA Game Studio. You want to do a Windows game. Now you don't want to do Xbox game because if you do, you're going to need to have an Xbox connected. You're going to have an account. You're going to have all this other stuff you have to do to connect to it. You want to try this at home on your own Xbox, go for it. That's great. But we're just going to code it in Windows. The code we generate and we type is no different from Windows Phone to Windows Game to Xbox. But please use Windows Game 4.0. And we're going to call it Shoot the Clown, so that's what I'm going to call it. If you choose to just leave Game 1, that's okay. For location, you want to make sure you're in the M drive, find your student folder. So once you find your folder, make sure you click Select Folder, and then you just click OK to create the solution. Once it's open, you're going to see game1.cs. And I'm going to zoom in on this a little bit so you can see it. Okay. Let me give you a brief introduction of what you're looking at here so it doesn't look too scary. It doesn't look like some wild desert of code that you are dangerous through. It's like the Emin wheel of your Visual Studio project. First of all these using statements are kind of like import that we do in Python. And as you look at it, you can see there's a lot of XNA stuff. And you see audio, content, gamer services, graphics, input media. These are all things that are going to enhance your game. It's audio, the content, the graphics, all that stuff. And this is tapping into code that is in a dynamic link library that then you can use in your program without having to type as much code. Okay? So we're not going to worry about that too much. Namespace is the name of your solution project. It's referring to the folder title. And yours might say Windows Game 1, or it might say Shoot the Clown, or it might say Windows Game 2. It just depends on whether you named it or not. If you didn't, Microsoft did it for you. And it's going to be really important here, guys. The following locations you're going to be doing work in. Number 1, you're going to do work in the class definition right at the top. So I'm going to have you do some code in here. You're going to leave public game 1 alone. You will do some initialization logic and initialize. Okay, initialization logic is any variables you're going to declare in here. Anything you need to set a value to, you're going to put in here. So rectangles and other things, and we'll talk about it in a moment. Load content, there's another location. You're going to be loading all game content in here, all sprites, all sound files and things. And then unload content. We might do some coding here, but I don't think we do it in this tutorial, so we'll just leave that alone for now. The key here, guys, is the update. All right, so guys, update this has to do with all of your game logic. So in the update, you are going to calculate, you're going to figure out where the X and Y position of a graphic is, or a rectangle in this case. You're going to determine whether something is colliding. Anytime you want to gather input from the keyboard, input from the mouse, input from a joystick, all of that stuff happens in there. So your collision detection, movement, control, updating of where things are, all that happens in update. Most of the work is in this method right here called update. After we update everything, then we draw it in the draw method. Okay, so the draw method is just basically put all the graphics on the screen where they belong. Okay, and the code here is going to be really straightforward. Okay, but what's going to happen is update and draw are going to happen 60 times a second, because XNA, it loops really fast. It's going to make for a really smooth graphic display. Okay, but this is called the game loop. The game loop is update and draw. Update has to happen before we draw it. Okay, so that's just the overview of what we're doing here. Now, for those of you that, if you remember what we're doing with Game Maker, we are going to create XNA versions of sprites and XNA versions of objects. In the case of a sprite, it's called a texture. Okay? So could you, let me just pause this and I'll tell you what you're going to do next. At this point, the first thing we want to do is add our graphics. We want to add our assets. So the way to do it is we're talking about content. Okay? The content of the game is our assets. They call it the content pipeline. And so what you're going to do is you want to right-click where it says Shoot the Clown Content. And you're going to choose Add Existing Item. Okay, this is an item that sits on the computer somewhere. Now, if you don't have this stuff, you can find your own graphics. But in the class files folder, we actually have graphics set called Clown Assets. They are background, clown, crosshair. So let me just show you the icons here. And the background is for the screen. It's going to be behind everything. The clown is going to bounce around the screen. And the crosshairs, which you can barely see, are going to show up on that blue background. And you're going to move the crosshair with your mouse or with keyboard. And you're going to try to click on the clown. If you hit it, the clown is going to change directions. It's going to speed up. You're going to get points. And it's going to play a sound. So that's how it's going to work. But what we want to do is we want to gather all these assets. So you highlight all the assets that you've developed. And you click Add. Notice it says Content Pipeline Files. When you're done, you're going to see it under Shoot the Clown Content. If you forget to add them here, your code will not work. It's going to cause an exception. It's going to halt the program and say, where is it? We can't find it. So just so you know, if you go into your XNA folder, you can find the game. You'll see the solution file. You open this folder, and you're going to see a folder of all the content, and there it is, background, clown, crosshair, and this content project file. So all of that stuff is now in your project.